India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Laos for ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting. Digital, defence, maritime connectivity, security, health and traditional medicine and cultural heritage preservation are priority areas for India-ASEAN cooperation.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar participated in the ASEAN-India Foreign Ministers meeting in Vientiane, the capital of Laos, on Friday. Speaking at the opening session, the EAM Dr. Jaishankar underscored the significance of ASEAN as the cornerstone of India's Act East policy and vision for Indo-Pacific.
For India, ASEAN is the cornerstone of its Act East policy and the Indo-Pacific vision that was thereafter built on it. For us, political, economic and security cooperation with ASEAN is of the utmost priority.
Dr. Jaishankar also spoke about the situation in Myanmar, keeping the sea lines of communication open and free, Quad's outlook on ASEAN and the conflict in Gaza.
It is encouraging to note that our partnership acquires ever more dimensions with each passing year. While our achievements are substantial, our ambitions must always remain high.
The minister held a series of bilateral meetings with his counterparts from ASEAN countries as well. Dr. Jaishankar met Lao PDR ministers, including its Home Minister Vilaywong Buddhakham. Dr. Jaishankar met Brunei Foreign Minister Dato Haji Iriwan. Both of them launched the logo celebrating 40 years of the India-Brunei diplomatic ties. Dr. Jaishankar also met Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of New Zealand, Winston Peters. Both of them discussed education, agriculture technology, Pacific Islands and cricket. Dr. Jaishankar met Vivian Balakrishnan, Deputy Foreign Minister of Singapore. He thanked Singapore for steering ASEAN-India relations in the last 3 years as country coordinator. Dr. Jaishankar met Cho Tae-yul, Foreign Minister of South Korea. Dr. Jaishankar also met Retno Marsudi, Foreign Minister of Indonesia. Dr. Jaishankar also held bilateral talks with Muhammad Haji Hassan, Foreign Minister of Malaysia. Dr. Jaishankar also met European Commission's Vice President Josep Borrell Fontelles. Earlier on Thursday, Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi and held talks on finding an early resolution of the remaining issues along the line of actual control to stabilize and rebuild bilateral relations.
We have both made considerable efforts to resolve the related issues. Our endeavor is to complete that process and ensure that there is full respect for the line of actual control and of agreements that we have signed in the past. Insofar as our bilateral ties are concerned, we also agree that they are best handled with the approach of three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual interest and mutual sensitivity. We will also appreciate that the state of the border will necessarily be reflected in the state of our ties.
Meanwhile, India and China will hold an early meeting of the Working Mechanism on Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs to take the discussions forward. Bureau Report, DD India.
And talk about Minister Jaishankar's visit to Laos. Joining me is Professor Swaran Singh, Foreign Affairs expert. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, let's first talk about India-China relations. Second time this month, foreign ministers of India and China have met, calling for LAC issues to be resolved. How do you read their stance and also the apparent roadblocks in the process?
Thank you, Shubhandu. First of all, this is not a standalone meeting of two foreign ministers. They were meeting first at the SU summit and now, as you mentioned, in Vientiane, this is India-ASEAN foreign ministers meeting. What is interesting is that both Wang Yi and Dr. Jaishankar have known each other for more than decades. So they have a very good personal bonhomie and they want to utilize these opportunities to take forward the disengagement process on line of actual control. And the wording from both sides is very interesting. For example, India has underlined that they should move forward with purpose and urgency and complete the process of disengagement. And the Chinese side has slightly differently mentioned that both sides should come halfway round and then they should work together in exploring, as they call, new progress possible in bilateral relations, because global South is expecting. So I think what is very clearly interesting is that both sides are able to openly share, even if their versions at this stage are slightly at variance with each other. And of course, both underlined that the 16th meeting after 2020 of the working mechanism of consultation and coordination on border affairs should happen as soon as possible. So there is a certain hope and momentum, but I assume something that might surprise us weeks later is the fact that the two foreign ministers may be talking of how to revive the informal summit meetings of two leaders, which is where I think the ice break can happen in that meeting. And I suppose that will be the subject which is not yet in public, but hopefully they are talking on that also.
And so do you also feel that this sort of understanding and the communication links between the leadership levels, the foreign ministers level for now, also helps facilitate the military talks which are meeting the roadblocks all through these 4 years?
I think that now in their last two meetings, the semantics are very interesting. They have started talking about strong direction.
Yes.
Now this is the same language that was developed by Modi and President Xi meeting in Wuhan in 2018, where they had agreed to give strategic guidance to their armed forces to ensure peace and tranquility. So a similar language, again, I think to me is an indication that they want to really ensure that sooner the two leaders meet is better, because that is where this desire, which is expressed from both sides, of completing the disengagement on a line of actual control. I suppose there are so many rounds of talks that have already happened, 21 rounds of core commander meetings, then of course 15 other meetings of working mechanism, as I mentioned, after 2020. So I suppose there is enough groundwork done, but finally if some things have to be clinched, there is a certain hint here that maybe sooner or later, in fact sooner than later, possibility of India-China reviving that informal summit meeting. And the language of strong guidance, I think, kind of alludes in that direction for me.
And Professor Singh, as Minister Jaishankar engages with ASEAN leadership, he also calls ASEAN as a cornerstone of India's Act East policy. What defines this partnership between the two sides?
I think that partnership again is an ongoing, long, well-established partnership from 92 onwards. India has been part and parcel of all ASEAN-centric initiatives and organizations, including being the founding member of East Asia Summit. Now this coincides with India's increasing interest from 1990s in engaging East, whether it is BIMSTEC, whether it is engaging ASEAN at various levels. Then we talk of our Far East and Far East initiative, from Look East to Act East. So India's engagement with East has expanded, but India is one of those countries that continues to say that in this entire region, which is also now called Indo-Pacific region, ASEAN must be on the driving seat and ASEAN should be the center stage to provide that opportunity for all other stakeholders to come and intervene and negotiate on issues. India also talks about making the whole region much inclusive, which is on similar lines with ASEAN. So definitely ASEAN has a proven relationship, whether it is trade relationship, investments, and when we move to Act East, we also move to strategic and security cooperation with many of these countries. So India is very deeply, widely engaged with ASEAN, and I think this again reinforces the series of meetings that we mentioned Indian Foreign Minister had at bilateral level with all these foreign ministers. Again showcases, our foreign minister being a career diplomat, he's known most of these people on, personal level for long years, and therefore that adds on to the advantage in diplomacy. I think that is clearly visible in the way he's present there and he's engaging with all of the foreign ministers in Vienna.
Right, sir. And so could you tell us a little more on the manner in which ASEAN approaches the issues of the regional geopolitics, especially the Indo-Pacific, as you mentioned?
I think it's interesting to see that in 2018, India and ASEAN had signed on something called Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, and they have since been working together after that joint statement signed in 2018. And on many issues, they see the geopolitics evolving in the region exactly in the same fashion. For example, they want to make sure the region stays inclusive, all stakeholders should be added there. This should not be militarized. Dialogue should be the kind of priority in solving all problems. So ASEAN and India in some ways are largely focused on normative and inclusive way of dealing with challenges, whether they are non-traditional security challenges or challenge of China emerging as a powerful player in the region. And ASEAN therefore finds engagement and conversation with India perfectly at home with each other in that sense. Some other countries, for example, particularly during Trump administration, Pompeo had taken a rather stronger line. And some other countries have also slightly, views at variance. For example, AUKUS, that constitutes of Australia, Britain, and America. India and ASEAN always find themselves much closer to how they wish to resolve issues, how they wish to address issues. And I think that shows why ASEAN has always welcomed India. Right from late 1980s, ASEAN had wanted India to a major player in that sense in the region. India initially had its own reasons to stay sort of at a distance, but from 1990s, India has been very seriously engaged in the whole region, primarily using ASEAN as the platform, as the center stage, which again gets reiterated again and again in all these expressions that come about repeatedly from leadership on both sides.
Professor Swaran Singh, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour, sharing your inputs.